Hi, it's your favourite Atomic Blonde here, and as promised, here's my review of Cobra Kai Season 5. There will be some spoilers, so if you haven't watched all yet, come back to this video later because I will be giving some stuff away. What a great season. As I said last week on my weekly roundup, always really nervous going in to watch the latest season of the show, just because I love it so much and it's so good. Just like, oh, please be good. Please don't let them have let the powers that be get their hands on it and strip out everything we love about this show. But there was nothing to worry about at all. Season 5, I think, is easily the best season since season 1. They had a bit of not a misstep, but I think 2 and 3 are still really watchable seasons, enjoyable seasons, but weren't a patch on season 1 and just sort of stalled a little bit. Season 4, absolutely course corrected, and season 5 is just built on that. So I think what they've really done, what you saw in season 2 and 3, obviously you got quite a young cast with the legacy cast, and a lot of the storylines in 2 and 3 were very much focused on the young cast and the kids. So it did come a bit like Cool Ways and Feelings and teenage angst, which you do need in the show if you're going to have a show about teenagers. But I think it was too heavy. And I say they course corrected in season 4 and 5, where they've got a really good balance between the kids' storylines and the legacy character, the older members of the cast storylines, and how they all kind of diverge into one story. So they've absolutely nailed that now. Again, I think, what we've seen is the creators of the show love Karate Kid. There's a real respect and love for the source material. And as a result, they do listen to the fans, and they obviously took the fans' feedback on board. And now we've had 2 cracking seasons, 4 and 5. So we left off season 4 with Chris going to prison for beating up Stingray, which obviously wasn't true. We know that Silver beat up Stingray and basically paid him off and said, I'll set you up for life if you lie. So Chris was arrested at Silver's place and taken off to court or prison. We had Miguel running away to a degree to go find his father, because his mum's always been a bit cagey about his dad and just that he's a bad man and we didn't want him in our lives. And then he got really hurt. He got closer and closer to Johnny as we were coming up more than his sensei, like a real father figure, because obviously he's dating Miguel's mum, Carmen. And there's an episode where he finds Johnny, just crushed, and he was drunk and he's like passed out on the floor, and Miguel gets him up and puts him into bed. And Johnny's like sort of saying, oh, I really love you, and I'm just trying to do the best for you. And he's like, and Miguel was like, oh, thanks. And then he goes, yeah, I love you, Robbie. And obviously Miguel is absolutely crushed. And we see Miguel going off to Mexico to find his father, who we know we've been told by Carmen is a very, very questionable character. So the season opens up with Miguel going down to Mexico to find his father. So it's a little bit silly in the sense that he sort of turns up. He kind of gets hustled as soon as he gets there, which is fine, and he gets given a map and he's trying to find a bar. And it's like somebody says the name Hector, and that's the name of his father. So he just bowls in there and goes, Hector, and it's like asking questions and assumes this guy is his dad. Now, I don't know how popular the name Hector is in Mexico, but generally, if you just hear a name, you don't make an assumption and ball in somewhere with the expectation that that's your long-lost father. So the first guy he finds, again, is very questionable, shady guy. It sort of transpires quite quickly that that's not his dad, and he's sort of sent out with a flea, and he's here and off he goes. And then, he's walking along, and this little kid runs out in front of a car, and Miguel saves the kid. And then the parents sort of run over and, oh, thank you, and basically introduce themselves, and lo and behold, this is Hector. And just so happens that this one is his father. So they basically invite him over for dinner to say thank you for saving their son. And at this point, Miguel's playing his cards a bit more closer to his chest, which is a bit more realistic, and he sort of goes over, and it seems like a very normal family setup. You know, wife, lovely, young child, looks like a great dad, and he's sort of questioning what his mum has said. Like, has she been lying to me? This guy seems really solid. And he sort of leaves a voicemail for his mum, sort of going, you know, you don't know what you're on about, kind of thing. And obviously, while all this is happening, you know, we've got Johnny and Robbie heading down to bring Miguel back, because Johnny promises Carmen that he'll get him, and it's sort of a bit of a road trip for them, and a sort of a father-son bonding. But he neglects to mention to Robbie that they're going to get Miguel. So Robbie only finds out pretty much when they get to Mexico. So he's like, what the hell, you know, I don't like Miguel, what am I doing here? I've been duped. I thought you wanted to spend time with me. And Johnny's like, you know, he's sort of becoming a little bit of a people pleaser, bless him. He's like, well, it's true, you know, we have come, but I do want to fix things. I do want to spend time with you, and I thought it'd be a good way that we could do both. And there's some just classic Johnny moments. He managed to get his car towed away, and he has to raise some money for to do this. And basically, Robbie ends up in this sort of chili, the actual chilies, hot chilies eating competition. And manages to eat the hottest chili in the world, and win some money so they can basically get their car back and then go find Miguel. And as Miguel's spending more time with his father, and once his father's kind of away from his wife, he sort of takes him to this club, and it's like a mixed martial arts club, and he's sort of overseeing all this, and then he's got a gun and he's got a henchman. And Johnny bought these FBI t-shirts, which are actually something body inspector, it says on the back, but it says FBI on the front. So there's this rumor there's these FBI agents in town, which is just hilarious. But Miguel's father then sort of starts looking at Miguel and like, who are you? Who are you working for? Why are you? And Miguel was obviously sort of scared, going, I don't know what you're on about. And Johnny and Robbie turn up at this club, and then sort of manage to get into a fight, but at which point Miguel's left with his father. But he basically opens his eyes up, and then his father sort of takes him to a store and like apologizes and says, oh, you know, you got to protect yourself and got to be careful. But basically, Miguel kind of sees him actually for what he is, and his mum wasn't lying. He's into lots of shady ththings, and you know, if he's worried about the FBI, you know, what exactly are his business activities? And he kind of makes his, you know, his apologies and says, I've got to go, you know, I'm backpacking, I need to crack on. And he leaves, and he's like absolutely devastated. He's really upset. You know, he's hurt his mum. His dad's exactly what his mum said he was. And Miguel's just sort of left. And there's this moment that Johnny pulls up at this moment and gets out the car. And Miguel's like so pleased to see him, and they sort of give a hug and everything. And then he clocks Robbie. But he'll basically get in the car and go back to the States, back to his mom, and that phone and say that he's got him. So, you know, it kind of puts Johnny and Miguel on a better footing going into the season. And there's obviously a story out there that Johnny's determined to get Miguel and Robbie to make up, or at least sort of mend some bridges. Yeah, big spoiler. Johnny basically, Carmen comes to Johnny and says that she's not been feeling very well. She's been feeling sick and that she's late. And Johnny's like, late for what? So, and basically the penny drops that she might be pregnant. So they go to get a pregnancy test. And yeah, she's pregnant. So obviously this knocks Johnny for 6, because he's just, you know, the ultimate bachelor, really. He's just a bit, you know, no real direction in life, shall we say, other than his dojo. So we sort of see this lovely story arc, really, with Johnny sort of stepping up, and he becomes this Uber driver, and he's the world's worst Uber driver, and basically gets 1 star for everything, because he's normally drinking, and there's empty beer bottles rolling around, and he's got his rock music on really loud and singing and punching the roof, and he's always late. It's just absolutely hilarious. And he delivers food, like sort of Deliveroo kind of thing, or Uber Eats, and he eats half the food before he's delivered it, or it's cold because he's got lost, and he's like, well, I don't care. Give me 5 stars though. So he's trying to sort himself out. He does he basically chucks out all his bachelor stuff. He buys new furniture and tries, making his apartment be child friendly, and he's, Googles his new best friend. So he starts Googling, how to look after a baby, because obviously we know from the previous seasons he was very young when his girlfriend Robbie's mum got pregnant, and he wasn't really a part of it. He was a crap dad. He wasn't really around, and he's like determined to make it right this time. And obviously with like Robbie and Miguel, so he tries even harder. And again, good old Google. So he tries to build an escape room so Miguel and Robbie can bond, and that doesn't work. He takes him to a restaurant, and that blows up in his face. And then I think he's having it might be a conversation with Daniel, I think. But he's basically like, for years he blamed Daniel for how his life turned out. And he's like, well, I could have just landed this kick at that tournament, or if I just could have done this, or I just could have done that. Well, actually, that's not really what it's about. And all they really need, and Daniel was like, yeah, well, I always just thought of this, or I thought that. And it's just like, if we just could have got it out of our system sooner, we maybe could have got, things could have been better, which is a bit of an epiphany. So Johnny decides the best way is to let them get out of their systems, and orchestrates a fight for them. And he's just like, go for it. And they start fighting. And then obviously things start getting a little bit out of hand, and they go up some stairs, and they're fighting on this balcony. And then we kind of get this, and Miguel's basically kicking Robbie's ass, and Robbie's kind of up against the railings. And we kind of get a flashback to, I think, season 2, when Robbie kicks Miguel over the railings at school, and obviously Miguel breaks his back or damages his back. So Johnny's legging it up there before this kind of gets out of hand, but obviously Miguel stops. And just sort of says, I was really angry at you, but I don't hate you. I don't hate you enough to hurt you. And they basically, like I say, get it out of their systems. And they decide to say, bury the hatchet. And Johnny goes, oh, thank God for that. I don't know what I'd do if you weren't talking when the baby comes along. And they're both like, baby? Sorry, what? Because they haven't obviously had their first scan yet, so Johnny shouldn't be saying anything. But they're like really pleased for Carmen and Johnny. And so this builds. So we sort of see this arc with Johnny trying to get his shit together, basically. But what we see on the flip side is obviously they both had to close their dojos because they're losing the tournament. And Daniel's gone into a bit of a tailspin. Daniel's actually behaving more like Johnny. He's drinking a lot. He's irrational. He's angry. He's just kind of lashing out at the world. And his wife Amanda's getting a bit fed up with it, got Chosen staying with them. And at the beginning of the episode 1, there's a naked guy just swimming in their pool, and it turns out to be Chosen. And he just gets out the pool completely full frontal in front of Amanda, and she's like, morning. And she's just like, this has got to stop. At the end of the tournament, we said we'd put it all to bed, and obviously Daniel's like, well, we can't, they're taking over the valley, there's more Cobra Kai's opening, we've got to do something. And she's like, I'm done. And she goes off to her sisters, and she's taking the kids with her, which puts Daniel into a bigger funk. And again with like Chosen being in it, he's almost like, what they've done really well is like Chosen's character is, we're really sort of getting to see what he's about and how he's grown since Karate Kid Part 2, how his life sort of panned out. And he's almost kind of stepping into a bit of a mentor role for Daniel, sort of Mr. Miyagi-esque. But what they're doing really well is he's not a parody of Mr. Miyagi, where he's not trying to imitate Mr. Miyagi, but I think, he's that kind of age and role model for Daniel, and Daniel sort of listens to him. And they're like, well, so then this basically spins out, and this is how Mike Barnes gets brought into the season 5, the bad boy from Karate Kid 3. And they're trying to find something on Silver, like who would know. So they track down Mike Barnes, because they're basically trying to find an old lawyer of Silver's who's really shady, and obviously Mike Barnes would have had a contract. And they find Mike Barnes, and it turns out, and again, it looks like he's running something quite shady. He's got these big men like carrying boxes into this warehouse. It all looks very dodgy. And Daniel goes in there and starts like looking around, and like comes out at Mike, and he's like, Daniel, like what the hell? And then basically turns out that he just owns a furniture store. I think it said it was his father-in-law's, and after he sort of went off the rails a bit when he was younger, he got into this business and met his father-in-law and got into furniture business and running the store, and it's all fine. They're chatting away, but he's been in there ages. So Jason thinks something's happened to Daniel and beats the crap out of them, the guys that work for Mike, and comes in and like kicks Mike flying, and he's just like, what is going on? And they kind of explain the situation with Silver, and he gives him a lawyer's name, but he's like, he hasn't got a copy of the contract anymore, and he doesn't really want to get involved and stuff. So they go off to try and find this lawyer. Obviously Silver finds out about it, and he basically sets fire to Mike Barnes's store. Mike's like absolutely livid, and he's just like, oh god, I can't believe you walked back in my life and you've been in my life 5 minutes and you screwed me over, basically. And like obviously Daniel's very apologetic, and Mike's just like, don't talk to me. We then see sort of cut to Danny's wife, who's at her mother's, and then her cousin turns up, who's the actress Robin Lively, who played Jessica Andrews in The Karate Kid Part 3, who was Daniel's girlfriend. So, but their cousins in this, so you assume that Jessica introduced Amanda to Daniel after they broke up. I don't know. And basically, she gives him a bit more, gives her a bit more of a backstory about Silver and why Daniel hates him so much. And we get some flashbacks to Karate Kid 3, but really helps Amanda understand why Daniel is like so determined to bring him down. And then we take it that she's obviously in her hometown, and there's some good old mean girls who are obviously mean girls at high school, and they start talking to her because they're in a bar, and sort of bring up her old nickname at school, and basically it all breaks out into a fight, and she ends up leaving with her cousin, her kids in tow, and like, bloody hell, mum, didn't know you had it in her. But it basically just transpires that we've all got our demons and our baggage, and she sort of understands, and she basically agrees to help Daniel bring down Silver. And again, it's a really lovely story arc for Amanda, that she's not the annoying, obnoxious wife, or doesn't stand by her husband kind of thing. And she agrees. I mean, and Silver's sort of been manipulating behind the scenes, and there was a bit of a set to an auction, a charity auction, and she's trying to get like represent someone, and Silver basically just pushes all Daniel's buttons, and Daniel ends up looking like the idiot, and obviously Silver comes out looking great as always. So so she decides to stand by him. We continue to see like Tori, poor old Tori, she's confronted Silver that she knows that he paid off the ref in the season 4 for her to win the tournament, and he's like, well, you won it anyway, it was just insurance, just in case, so you won it sort of fair and square, which obviously it wasn't. And we find out she's secretly visiting Kreese in prison. He's still very much sort of a father figure to her, and they're trying to work out or find a way to get Kreese out. So she sends a note to Daniel to basically say that Stingray lied, and is trying to basically get Daniel and the kids to figure out what's going on. And through this again, she has her character's just evolved. She's sort of a little bit of a caricature, girl from the wrong side of the tracks, poor girl, but she's developed into a really good character, a really strong character, and a character that has just quite a good moral compass. She's been knocked, physically and metaphorically in life. She's looking after her very ill mother. We don't know if she's sort of terminally ill, but we just sort of see, she's in a hospital bed. She's working jobs while she's at high school. And that's why she hates Sam so much, who's just a bit of a princess, who has everything, has a family, has good parents, but still is always moaning, which is true. Sam's definitely the weak link in the cast. They have toned her down this season. She's not as unbearable as other seasons. And hopefully they're getting her character together. But again, there's a little bit of a cliche that after losing the match and meaning the dojos had to close, she's off finding herself, and she dumps Miguel, and she's not doing karate anymore. And, it's kind of all about her. So, so it's a great story arc for Tori. And ultimately, she's still at Cobra Kai because she wants to leave Cobra Kai, but she's there for Kreese to try and find dirt Silver to get him out. Silver brings over the daughter of his mentor, because his mentor has his own version of karate, but obviously it's a much dirtier, there's not a lot of honor in that skill of fighting. And basically bringing her in and seeing he's expanding dojos, he basically wants to open every Cobra Kai all around the world and basically mold all these kids in this way of fighting. And he keeps talking about, he doesn't have children, there's no legacy, and this is so really important to him. And so we don't know, why, maybe he's ill, we don't know, but he's got a real thing about his own mortality, and he wants to pass something on. And that's why he's sort of mentoring the kids and who's going to sort of take over from him and all that kind of thing. So everything's kind of culminating. So this crazy woman from Korea is there. She's brought her own senseis with her, and they really kind of start going all out with the kids. And Cobra Kai is known for no mercy, but this is on like another level. And they've got the kids fighting amongst themselves, like who's going to be top dog in the dojos. And Terry is sort of taking this Kenny Payne, the kid from the previous season who was being bullied by Anthony LaRusso. And obviously Robbie took him under his wing and started teaching him at Cobra Kai. But now we've sort of seen this kid being sort of twisted by Cobra Kai's morals, and the kid who was bullied is now becoming the bully and continues to torture Anthony. And Terry shows in this move, I think it was a silver bullet, where it's basically like you punch in the chest and it just completely wins you and you can't breathe. And he teaches him how to do this. It's a really dirty move, but the kid's loving it. This kid is sort of actually relishing in the power that he has over kids after being bullied for years. You can sort of see it, but it's really starting to twist this kid. And Robbie's worried about him and he's trying to get him to leave Cobra Kai. And he's trying to point out that you're the bully now, and kids be like, so what? Better to be a bully than be bullied kind of attitude. And then we have basically there's a committee and there's some sort of league that Cobra Kai want to get into. There's some sort of recognition thing. So Chosen, Johnny, and Daniel kind of form a new dojo. And get all the kids back together and start preparing for this. So when this panel come round, they're not just evaluating Cobra Kai, they're sort of evaluating their dojo as well and their different methods. And Chosen starts training the kids, and and how karate is about defense and protection. It's not about aggression, and sort of teaches them this lesson about, it gives them all an egg each, a raw egg, and he's going to come around and basically break the egg, and you've got to protect the egg. And they all go off and try and do this individually, and obviously it fails miserably. And then they try again, and then they basically, kind of learn the lesson of like, if they're all together back to back and they work as a team, they can protect the egg, which is useful later. So we've kind of got this, committees going around, and it's absolute homage, and it's even reference to like the direct reference to Rocky IV. So you've got this super high-tech Cobra Kai with like everything money can buy, versus the down tech of the dojo that Johnny and Chosen and Daniel are running, and they do a display and something doesn't go quite to plan. And Johnny starts basically quoting, Cobra Kai might have this, that, and the other thing, but we're more running up the mountain and chopping down the trees. And one of the guys judging this is a big Russian guy, and he's like, Drago. And he goes, oh, I love that film. I love Rocky IV. If I can change, you can change. We could all change. And it's just like, it's really corny, cheesy, brilliant moment, because we all know how much Johnny loves his 80s films and montages. So they're basically still in the running, and there's going to have to be a fight between them, and whoever wins this fight will get this accreditation thing. So that's what happening. So they're all training for that. It's a great montage coming back to the 80s. That Carmen basically has this dream, and she wakes up, and this dream is like, you got Johnny in a flight suit on a motorbike, kind of dressed up like Maverick, and they've got this house and the kids and the baby's been born and they're playing volleyball on the beach. And the fact that this is Carmen's dream, I mean, you can completely see this as being Johnny's dream, but it's just absolutely hilarious. And she tells him about the dream, and again he's like, right, I've got to be a dad, I've got to do something great. So this is all going through, and we get the tournament, and excuse me, Hawk Eli fights Kenny, because he's the obviously the reigning champion from the previous year. There's conversation whether Robbie, Miguel, or Hawk will fight, and the boys decide between them. It should be Hawk because he's the reigning champion. And obviously he's Kenny's been taught this dirty move by Silver, and he uses it, and his crack. So you're like, oh god, and he's like, obviously he's down, and then he's just using these really dirty moves, and unfortunately Hawk loses. Then there's due to be a rematch between Sam and Tori. But Tori, while all this fight's going on with Hawk, she's kind of clocking that the ref keeps looking at Silver. And when Hawk's like scoring points, he's like, oh no, it's out of bounds. And basically the ref's been bought off again. So Tori basically legs it. She kind of refuses to fight Sam, knowing that it's rigged, and they put a different girl in who fought in the tournament last year. And again, like some of the points go against Sam, because he's basically saying again that's a legal move, or she's out of bounds. So they regroup and say, look, you got to make it, you got to fight smart, and you've got to make it, unequivocal. Which she does. I mean, it's a punch, and it's clearly in bounds. It's clearly executed. So the ref kind of looks at Silver, but he's got to give the point, because otherwise it's just going to be like way too obvious. So basically ends up like Sam wins her fight. And then basically the committee decide that they can both, get this accreditation thing. So so the next, the culmination of season 5 is all about trying to bring Silver down. We've got Kreese trying to get out of prison. So while he's in prison, he's sort of saying what he thinks he needs to say. He's trying to make himself sort of top dog, which he does. But he sort of has to see a therapist or psychologist. And she just says, like, you're full of crap. I know you're just spinning me a line, kind of thing. So over time, like Kreese like gets attacked by the sort of that alpha or the head honcho in the prison. And what they do quite well here is that they kind of do, while he's in therapy, you sort of see all these different versions of Kreese, and he's talking in flashbacks. And we've seen an actor play the young Kreese before. So while he's like being beaten up and he's on the floor, there's almost like, obviously because the guy who plays Kreese is getting on a bit, they basically bring in the young actor who fights back and basically kicks the crap out of everybody and becomes sort of top dog, and then it goes back to old Kreese. But it's done really, really well. And obviously it's a better way to get some action where the actor, isn't potentially up to it anymore. He's clearly got very bad arthritic hands and stuff, but it's all cut together really well and makes sense. And he kind of becomes top dog in the prison. But then we sort of see him after he's rejected, sort of have a bit of a breakdown. He's just like, this is it, I'm going to die in prison, I give up, kind of thing. And he starts having these regular sessions with the psychiatrist, and talks about Johnny and how he was a son to him and he threw it all away. And he sort of softens towards the other prisoners. And then there's basically a set to in the mess hall. And the guy he ousted as top dog basically attacks him with a shiv and stabs him multiple times, and Kreese is on the floor and bleeding out. And basically, we're like, he's dead. Kreese is dead. It's like, shit. And I was like, oh my God, I can't kill off Kreese. And basically the gang have all gone to Stingray and trying to get him to go to the police and say that it was Silver that beat him up, and he's lied. And Stingray's like scared. He's like, well, he nearly killed me when he wasn't trying to kill me. I can't go against him. He will kill me. But kind of hints to the kids that there may be some recordings there where he's talking Dungeons and Dragons and speak, and they form a plan to go to the dojo and try and access the servers, because obviously one of the kids is a super geek, Dimitri. So they want to try and hack the servers, see if they can find the footage of Silver beating up Stingray. Meanwhile, you've kind of got Daniel, Johnny, and Chosen on a night out celebrating. And it's great. They're all getting absolutely smashed. I mean, they're celebrating, obviously, Johnny being a dad because they've given out the news, and what's happened at the tournament. Basically, the women kind of call it a night, and the boys want to stay out, so they get in the limo they've been hired, and they're all absolutely smashed, singing "Eye of the Tiger." It's absolutely hilarious. And but then like the limo starts speeding up, and then the limo's like swerving all over the place, and they're like, "Where are we? We're not where we're supposed to be." And you basically find out that the limo's been hijacked. You see the driver of the limo coming out the club, and they're like, "Where's my limo?" So they're like the boys then like sort of freaking out and hammering on to try and find out who's driving. Eventually the limo pulls over, and it's Mike Barnes absolutely off his face. Basically, like rallying at the Russo, going, "I've lost everything. You've brought back in my life, and I've lost absolutely everything. I'm going after Silver." And then because everybody's drunk, like Chosen and Johnny think this is a really good idea. Daniel's drunk, but he's a little bit more, guys, we can't just bowl in there and start a fight. We need a plan. We can't do this. But because they're all drunk, they're like, no, this is it. He won't be expecting it. This is the best time to strike. So Barnes, Chosen, and Johnny get in the limo and drive to Silver's house. Johnny's just left like abandoned. And he doesn't know where he is. He tries to phone Amanda, but the cell service is rubbish and it's cutting in and out. And he's like, Johnny's they're going to Silver's house. I need you to come and get me. Obviously they arrive in their drunken state at Silver's house. Silver's there with the mentor's daughter, and it's Kim, discussing the expansion of the dojos. They all come bowling in, and this massive fight breaks out. Now, obviously, her senseis are there. They're all highly trained. It just turns into a bit of a massacre. Johnny has the absolute crap kicked out of him. He's on the floor bleeding. We've seen Mike being pulverized. I mean, he hasn't fought in years. And then Chosen takes on Silver, and he's like holding his own. And obviously, he's highly skilled, and they're fighting, and it's and basically Chosen's kind of got the upper hand. So Silver then basically picks up one of his like samurai swords, and Chosen's got his like knives with him, and they're fighting, and they end up outside. And then several times, like basically Chosen gets sort of cut in the arm, and then he gets badly hurt. But he retaliates, and basically Silver's on the floor. He's like down and out, and he's like a bit like, yeah, go on, like kill me kind of thing, finish it. And Chosen stands back because he's an honourable man, and goes to turn his back on him. And basically, because Silver's completely dishonourable, he lays open Chosen's back. There's like real gash up his back, and Chosen collapses. Then we see Silver's going inside, and Johnny's on the floor, and the scan photo falls out of his pocket, and of course he sort of gets his sort of second wind and fights back. And then Mike comes in, and and basically on the security cameras at the dojos, they can see all the kids have gone to the dojo because obviously they're trying to get to the servers. So he's like, I'm going to go sort this mess out, and we're going to sort this mess out. And he basically tells the senseis to finish off Johnny and Mike. But like I say, they fight back, and then we end up at the dojo. And the kids are like, and basically when they get there, they find that the footage has been scrubbed, it's all been deleted of Silver beating up Stingray. But then they kind of get a second idea, but the Cobra Kai gang have sort of found out that they're there, and they all come piling in. And it just culminates in this mother of all fights, this massive fight. And the lesson they learned earlier is obviously they're having to protect Dimitri while he's downloading the footage off the server. He manages to get that. He chucks it to Hawk, and then Hawk basically manages to give it to Anthony. And then Anthony's trying to load it up on the screens or the internet or Facebook or something. And obviously all the kids coming in on to try and get the laptop to stop the download. And it's all like, protect the egg. So they're all around Anthony. Tori had previously gone to Sam to tell her that, that Silver cheated. Obviously, initially this doesn't go down well, but then it sort of transposes, and like sort of Tori's just like, I knew I shouldn't have come to you, I just didn't know, and I can't trust anybody. Later on, Sam goes to Tori's house and sort of sees, her mum in a hospital bed, and there's like sort of takeout food everywhere. And Sam kind of realised how hard Tori has it. And they sort of put their differences aside to take down Silver. So when all this fight's kicking off, you've got Sam and Tori there, and they're trying to do, they're fighting together to try and take down the Korean woman, Kim. But then Tori's like to Sam, go protect your brother, go protect the egg. And then the other girl that was fighting Sam and Tom, I can't remember her name, basically comes into Tori, and then they basically try and, like, the only way they can take this woman down is together, so they're fighting her. It's just like everybody's fighting everybody. It's going absolutely crazy. And then finally Anthony manages to get up on the screen, like Silver's arrived, and basically it's kind of getting broken up because Silver's arrived, the police are on their way. I think Daniel and Johnny and get to the dojo to help try and break all this up. And then we've got Daniel and Silver fighting, which is brilliant. And then we finally get this up on the screen that basically shows Tori confronting Silver, and him admitting that he's cheating. It's all completely dishonorable, and he's like, win by any means. And all the kids like really shocked by this, and he's like, yeah, but it doesn't matter, I'm still great, and my dojo's still taking over the world. And so it's like sort of this fight between Terry and Daniel, and Daniel gives it the whole crane, whacks Terry in the face. He goes flying, and there's this big sort of big glass cobra thing on the wall, and he smashes that. And then he comes to come after Daniel, and the kids are all just like completely disillusioned with him and start taking off their Cobra Kai shirts and jumpers and things. And basically, they know it's over. But, like, the police get there, and then Terry gets arrested. And they're basically sort of saying, they're talking to a cop, and saying, oh, he can be cell buddies with Kreese. And they're like, oh, you've not heard? And I heard what? And as the cop's talking, he said, oh, there was an incident at the prison, and there's a sort of flashback to the prison, and you've got Kreese on a stretcher who's taken in, there's blood everywhere. The doctor goes to examine him and examines the wound, but it's not a wound. And basically it's just one big setup from Kreese. It's basically melted jelly on his top, red jelly. And obviously Kreese is not dead. He wakes up, takes out the doctor and the guards, steals the doctor's clothes, which is ridiculous because his doctor's absolutely tiny. He's like this little waif of a guy, and somehow his clothes fit Kreese. But hey, who cares? And earlier on, when he's like having his breakthrough with the psychiatrist, he basically nicked her pass, and he's broken out of prison. So it's brilliant. You got Terry potentially going to prison. You got Chris breaking out of prison. And then we see like Chosen getting out of the limo, and he's got bandages everywhere. And they basically get him into an ambulance because he's like bleeding out from these bloody knife wounds. But that's kind of it, you know. So yeah, the bad guys are where the bad guys should be, other than Kreese has managed to escape from prison. But if he probably just held fire, he would have ended up getting released anyway, because it would have transpired that it was Silver behind putting him in prison. The dojos are back up and running. They need to come up with a name for the new dojo, which we don't have yet. We've kind of got Tori and Sam. I wouldn't say friends, but there's some sort of bridge building going on there. And we've got Robbie and Miguel, who are now friends. And Robbie and Tori have got back together, and Miguel and Sam have got back together. And we're sort of seeing the fall of Cobra Kai again. So whether the kids then obviously would join the other dojos, we'll have to wait and see in season 6. So I think season 6 is meant to be the last season. So I'm pretty sure it's going to go out with a bang. But we have heard there's potentially a Karate Kid film in 2024. Now, whether that's on the back of the series and this will be carried through, or it's something completely new, I don't know. I just hope whatever they do, they don't ruin it, because this show is just so good. There's a lot more going on in the series. I've just sort of given you the kind of core thread of what happened in season 5. But as always, go watch it. There's other storylines and incidents, and there's lots of fights along the way, and Sam finding herself. But yeah, I love this show. It's just so much fun. It's got the perfect mix of sort of nostalgia, but not overdoing it. And they have just enough sort of flashbacks that if you haven't watched any of the Karate Kid films, you can pick up exactly what's happening and who's who. I'd say if you haven't watched the Karate Kid films, it's probably worth watching them before watching Cobra Kai. But you really don't have to. And I think if anything, after watching Cobra Kai, you'll probably go back and watch the films if you haven't. So, I mean, this is how you bring back a series. You know, it's not a reboot; it is a continuation. But there's just so much love and respect in this show. You know, it just shows up all the other showrunners who have tried to reboot stuff and tried to put a modern spin on it. And even when they do talk about a modern spin in this show, you've got Johnny, who's just rooted in the 80s, and he will be forever, bless him. But again, you see this story arc that he's trying to learn and he's trying to be more, but ultimately Johnny's Johnny. And he just sort of brings that levity and that humor that you need. And he's kind of us to a degree, all kind of rolling our eyes going, without the PC world we live in these days. And he just doesn't get it. But they just walk the line. They don't go too hard in on either side. They're not offending anybody. It's just a romp. It's just complete fun. Every character has grown. Every character has evolved. The characters aren't the characters they were in season 1. I think what's brilliant in this is like a real sort of Chosen and Silver are very much forefront in this. There's still plenty of Danny and Johnny, but I think kudos to the actors that they were almost prepared to take a little bit of a back seat in this to really let Chosen and Silver shine and let that story arc evolve. I mean, it sort of shows there's really no egos on this show, or doesn't appear to be any egos on this show, that everybody gets their time to shine, really. So I think that the writers have done a fantastic job. It is so easy for some of these characters to be insufferable, and they're not. They're just normal, balanced people. Like, say, Daniel's wife, Amanda's sort of coming to her own in this. Anthony, the son's coming to his own. They're kind of working out what to do with that character. Robbie, Miguel, all the characters have sort of matured, as they're getting older. They're not trying to keep them at the same age, which often you see with writing with kids. So I can't recommend this series enough. You don't even really need to be into karate to want to see this show. It's just really it's right mix of action, great pacing. Say there's humor. There's nothing really this show is missing. You'd say you got the right amount of nostalgia. I just absolutely love it. It's sort of it's just a shame that we've got to wait at least another year for the show, and this is the downside to the binge model. There's only 10 episodes. They have gone from like half an hour to 40 minutes, which I think actually suits it better. They can flesh out a bit more, say, the characterization and the story up to the 40-minute an episode. And there's 10 episodes per season. If you just want to have fun, switch brain off, do go check out this show. So that's it. That's Cobra Kai season 5 done for another year. Can't wait for season 6. If it is the last season, I think they're just going to go for broke. And as long as they maintain the standard and the same showrunners, I don't think they can fail. So bring on season 6. Do check out Cobra Kai. Hope you liked the video. Do like, share, subscribe, and go check out my channel, Atomic Blonde, LDN, where you can find my other videos. I do a weekly roundup of things I've been watching, which I don't know is up on a Sunday or a Monday, depending on what I've got going on. And I do some ad hoc ones like this of shows I particularly love or films that I've seen that I really want to share my thoughts on. So thank you for watching, staying with me this long. Hopefully you're still there. And if you are, do share, do like, and I will see you soon. Bye-bye.